join me in giving a warm welcome to Judy Murphy.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. I was so entranced in listening to the doctor that I didn't have time to get nervous. All of a sudden, I was like, "Oh my God, I'm speaking next," and it terrifies me. So thank you. You were riveting. As she said, my name is Judy Murphy. I am very passionate about women and about recovering women, and women in in systems, formal systems, whatever they are. Also, I am a mother of 3 children. I'm also a mother recovering from 10 years of IV meth addiction, 22 years total of alcoholism and drug addiction, and haven't had to stick a needle in my arm or take a drink or do anything else like that since September 22nd of 1995, and for that I'm very grateful. Thank you. My children were removed from my care, and I was sent to jail for 60 days, and as I talked about, as I'm going to discuss, is that I had a very positive experience. Had a great social worker who understood recovery because she had a recovering family member. I had a great in-home provider who came in to do family services with my children and I and do supervised visits, and everybody in my team. The judge was great. I had a great defense attorney who was just really behind me 100%, and he really helped me to fight for my rights too. Now, what I found after I got sober and began to really, I was so passionate about being sober, and I was so excited because I had lived in, just the hell of active addiction for 22 years, and the guilt and the shame over what I'd done to my kids and what causes we had had as a family. The shame and the guilt over that was so overwhelming that when I began to heal, my passion was, I want everybody like me to feel like I do right now. I want the other women that I used to use with, the other men that I used to use with, I want them to feel good about their life. I want them to know that there's hope and that there's help out there. And so I had a GED in one of the many treatment centers I'd been in before, but I went to college right after I got sober immediately because I wanted to grow up and really quick and help. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a part of solution building in our community. I come from Ottumwa, Iowa. Radar O'Reilly, he's not even real, but he's not from there anyway. Tom Arnold is from there. Tom Arnold is, I guess a famous movie star. I never met him. I don't know him, but I used a lot of drugs with his sister Lori. And I'm not saying that to be mean, but she was one of my very dearest friends. Incredible woman. I'm here because I was fortunate not to be sent to federal prison like she was for many, many years. I had friends that I used drugs with for many years one who is in prison for the very rest of his life without possibility of parole because of his drug dealing. So I was given the gift of recovery, and I am truly grateful for that. And I'm grateful to be here, and I'll even be more grateful when I'm done. But it's a subject I'm passionate about. One of the things that I did, I was a battered woman's advocate, and Carol, make sure you point at me and go when it's time. I was a battered women's advocate in our community, and I got to learn a lot about women's issues. And I started working with substance-using women in my own personal life in the 12-step program I was involved in, but I also started learning how to be an activist in our community. One of my job duties was to attend a community meeting called the Community Task Force for Drug-Affected Children, and we affectionately called that the Drug Baby Task Force. And the reason why we affectionately called it that is because there were, the county attorney's office was there were doctors and nurses, there were law enforcement there was Department of Human Services, Child Protection was there was lots of people who were working in all of these different systems, and they formed this task force because in 1994, 95, 96, further on from there, they started to see a lot of women in our community whose children were being removed because of their addiction to methamphetamine. And what was amazing to us as the meth addicts in Ottumwa is that they didn't catch us before then, because actually, we had been doing meth since the early 80s in Ottumwa, Iowa, and it was widespread, and but there wasn't a lot of information about that. So our community was just devastated. They didn't know what to do. We had all these different systems that came together and said, what are we going to do? And I was fortunate to be from that small community, and when I first got sober, when people would say, "How are you?" I thought they really wanted to know. And so everybody knew my story. It was way before I learned boundaries. And so I was really well versed in the different services in our community. Number one, I accessed them when I was, trying to get sober, and in previous times in attempts at sobriety. So I knew these people, and they knew my history. And so what happened was they got together and they said, we don't know what to do. I worked with the women's movement, and they said, do you think, because we had support groups for battered women, they said, do you think that you could start a support group for women who are meth addicts to see if you can help find some solutions and help them get to where you're at? And of course I wanted to do that. It was something I was excited about from the very start. And so the very first Moms Off Meth group got started in July of 1999. And this was in direct response to the number of women who are losing their children. As a woman in recovery, I got to tell you, I was very active in a 12-step program, and still am, in my community. And when your children are removed and you're in the child welfare system, there's lots of recommendations that they ask you to do. You go to get an evaluation, you go to treatment, you graduate successfully, and then you attend AA, NA, you do hair tests and drug tests, all of those things. As an active participant in a 12-step program, all of these women whose children they were being removed, I wasn't seeing them in recovering meetings. And so I knew for me, and it's something I couldn't tell them because that's why they call it anonymous, it was fascinating to me to think, why aren't they coming there? What are the reasons why we're not seeing any success here? And why was I so blessed to have this fortunate, wonderful experience in the child welfare system when the women I knew whose children were being removed were devastated? They weren't having a positive experience. They were being treated many times like stupid children who needed to be punished. They were being treated with disrespect, treated like they were just stupid children, and they didn't deserve their children. And they had so much, one thing that is a common theme in the recovering community, especially women, is that we are filled with self-loathing. We are filled with shame. We are filled with guilt, and we don't know how to feel our feelings sober. I used from the time I was 11 until I was 33, and that's how I knew. I obviously had to grow up some after that, but I didn't know, and a lot of women do not know how to deal with those intense feelings. So we got the women together and we started asking them the important questions, which the task force wanted us to ask them. Why weren't they being successful? And I thought the more important question was to ask the women who had made it is, how did you get there? How were you successful in this system, and what worked and what didn't? So we began to collect information, some of which I'm going to share with you. And we started getting together with the women and partnering with this community task force. And the women were beginning to be viewed as experts in our community and as partners in our community. And these were the women that nobody thought was going to make it. These were the women that are drug task force officers, that are county attorneys, that are local judges. I mean, everybody was looking at them and saying, they're addicted to meth, there is no hope. That's what the research says. 1 out of 10 get sober. These guys aren't going to make it. A lot of the child welfare workers were very honest, and they said, we see a woman come into the system that is addicted to meth, and we immediately start thinking termination of parental rights. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. That's where it's moving to. So we began to work with the women on getting their voices out there, getting heard in the communities, having community forums, having not just the professionals meet them, but also have the community members meet them. And it was just an incredible, empowering process for the women in the groups. Another thing that they said, because we're talking about in our communities, why women don't go to access prenatal care when they're using. And so we asked the women in the Moms Off Meth group, why don't you guys go? What was the reasons why you didn't go? And so we talked about the brochures and the pamphlets that they have laying out in the doctor's offices, and they said, we can't even pick them up if we're using. We're so full of shame and so full of guilt, and the messages on those are horrific, and the pictures and just the images and the message in that was so negative to them that they knew right off that it wasn't a safe place to be. They didn't feel safe to tell their doctor, and so they just hid from prenatal care until close to delivery, which is never good for anybody, whether they're using or not, obviously. So one thing that we did in our community was help the women. Helped us. We all got together as a group to develop a brochure for substance using women, and it had a message from the women in the Moms Off Meth group on that brochure and it talked about stopping at any time is good for you and better for you and your baby. And here's the different treatment access and different support services in our community, and had a list of those.